Number 10. Black Widow and the Invisible Woman. Starting off our list with something new and mild from the Invisible Woman solo series. This recasts her past as a secret agent. So before she married Reed, she worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and ran covert ops, which with her power set actually makes a lot of sense. The story thus far is that her past partner has gone missing and she's gonna break all the rules to go behind enemy lines to find him. This involves her teaming up with Black Widow, who suddenly has a massive chip on her shoulder about superheroes. So Sue has to prove herself to her. She has to prove that she's not like other superheroes. Natasha, are you okay? You've been on so many superhero teams. I know you're a clone, but you have all the memories of the other Nat, who Hydra Cap killed. So these two just have beef until Sue proves herself to her by faking a drinking contest. So it's low, because it's not full hate or sustained, but it's odd. This is a 5-issue mini, by the way. It's pretty good. Check it out if you have the time. This is manufactured conflict. Manufactured conflict is manufactured. Does Nat not remember the time Sue fought the entire Avengers team to a standstill after the government took her kids and forced them out of the Baxter building? Reed's just noped out of that. He knows better than to try and stop an angry Sue. Number 9. Hal Jordan and Batman. So Green Lantern and Batman, since they started teaming up in the late Silver Age, Brave and the Bold, there has been friction. Batman has never fully appreciated Hal's attitude, which ranges from cavalier to I'm doing exactly what the Guardians tell me. But this really came to a head when Hal went evil. And also there's some beef from Hal's side from the time he was desperate enough to go to Bruce for help with his alcoholism and just got turned away. Post Parallax, Bruce wanted nothing to do with Spectre Hal and didn't trust him at all. And when he came back to life, he still didn't trust him and then got extra mad because everybody judged him for it. But honestly, he had good reason. Just because all the people you killed came back to life doesn't mean you didn't kill them in the first place. Eventually these two would find an even keel through an, in my opinion, contrived sequence where Bruce couldn't handle a power ring despite having wielded one multiple times before. All of this ended up being shifted more into frenemy mode in the New 52, where all of a sudden these two were all about each other. Bruce revealed his identity on purpose to Hal first, he lets Hal fly him places. I don't know, I have questions. I notice things. Other people are like, oh, where's Darkseid? And I'm like, is Hal's hand around Bruce's waist? Enhance image. No shame in my game. We all make our own fun. Number 8. Hawkman and Green Arrow. So Carter Hall and Oliver Queen hate each other for the same reason that Hal and Ollie should hate each other, but the comics insist they don't. A fundamental difference of opinion. Green Arrow leans really left, to the point where he just yells at Hal, for example, for being a space cop and for listening to the Guardians, ever. He just yells at him and calls him stupid and a stick in the mud, all kinds of things, but they're best friends? Like, what is going on with Hal's self-esteem? You don't have to take that. Anyway, Hawkman leans more right. These terminologies are stateside ones, by the way. These terms mean different things depending upon where you are in the world. So these two butt heads, or they did pre-Flashpoint. Post-Flashpoint in the New 52, except we mostly forget this was a thing. These two used to have some huge blow-up arguments. It's mostly been forgotten because of the struggle of what do we do with these characters in the first place. Just never forget, Oliver Queen will scream in your face if you have a different opinion than him on social issues, but when push comes to shove and he finds out his ward is a drug addict, he will slap him across the face and kick him out. So, all talk, huh? Number 7. Jean Grey and Emma Frost. This comes to us from New X-Men, the Grant Morrison run. And the genesis of this one, we've talked about it numerous times at this point. Jean and Cyclops were having problems. Emma, fresh off surviving the Genoshan genocide, started giving him psychic therapy. During this point, the two started having a psychic affair, an affair where she would masquerade as Jean as the Phoenix. It was all kinda messed up. So when Jean found out about all this, she was understandably upset. Less understandably, she psychically tortured Emma because of it. When Jean lets her powers go, she's terrifying. Full stop. Anybody who questions how she uses them has a long history to call back upon. This conflict would be solved through plot convenience. Jean would just kinda become the Phoenix and poof away. Now that description will bother some people who really felt the gravitas of her sacrifice, but different strokes for different folks. Maybe I'm Zorn. I was Zorn the whole time. Who wasn't Zorn but was Zorn. Number 6. Captain Marvel and Iron Man. This is Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel, who is currently having a villain arc in the comics at the time of this recording. A purposeful one, not one by accident. And it's a good play. Lean into it. Play with it, that's smart marketing. Anyway, despite years of friendship, her and Tony fell through over Minority Report. I mean, an Inhuman, Ulysses, who could tell the future. And when Rhodey died as a driving plot force, who was dating Carol at the time, it was on. She felt she could have prevented it if she knew the future. Tony was all, I don't agree. Also, I was the antagonist in the last Civil War. It's not a good look. Don't do it. She was all, screw you. I'm starting a teenage Gestapo and getting several people killed. Get ready to be beaten into a coma, Care Bear. He calls her Care Bear, so I'm flipping it back. Yeah, this was intense. The Civil War arcs go hard. You go from fighting alongside someone to contemplating murdering them. However, unlike the first Civil War, they scramble to undo any lasting character damage, so Tony just got over it. I built myself a new body, it's fine. Number 5. Namor and Black Panther. Two kings fighting over whose kingdom is better and who should have mastery. Also, they just really clash personality-wise. It takes a decent amount of ego to rule, and T'Challa handles his with more grace than Namor, who can at times fall into megalomania and just slips into straight-up villainy sometimes too. Still, these two can also respect each other. You can make their relationship fairly malleable. But well, they've fought for decades, and fans have a very let them fight mentality, alongside a who would win. Black Panther stabbed Namor that one time. Namor's been killed a few times actually. Beheaded by Hyperion once. Ouch. Number 4. Batman and the Red Hood. So this is a more one-sided hate, as when Jason Todd came back to life, Batman's feelings were very conflicted, but Jason had had years to nurse his hate, a festering rage that had started long before he died, exacerbated by seeing that his death had changed nothing in Bruce's methods, that he'd been replaced by another Robin, that the Joker still lived. Red Hood was more than happy to kill to accomplish what he felt Batman could not, and go up against the rest of the Bat family. It made him dangerous, as did the fact that Bruce still cared about him. Batman doesn't do feelings the best though, so the anger eventually manifested mutually. These days Jason is in more of a black sheep capacity, but these two still aren't good. Batman backhanded him that one time in Rebirth. Just why do people keep having him do that? Stop it. Number 3. Hawkeye and the Swordsman. Yeah, classic beef. So Hawkeye was a villain before he eventually had a change of heart. Now the Swordsman actually started off as a villain for Hawkeye. He had actually trained Hawkeye when the two were both villains. At that point he was called Trickshot, which is a better name. So when the Swordsman wanted to join the Avengers, obviously Clint didn't trust him and kept a close eye on him, which led to him being denied entry, which then led to him kidnapping Captain America. So yeah, hate justified. The Swordsman has been on the Avengers since though, so I guess he got what he wanted. Number 2. Reed Richards and Thor. So this occurred during the first Civil War, Civil War I. Thor was dead at this point, and so the pro-registration side felt that they needed something on their side, a big heavy hitter, some brawn. They needed some muscle. The Hulk was in space, kept there by them. This is leading up to Planet Hulk. So Reed thought, what if we just clone Thor? I have the tech, I have the DNA, I can do anything really. And Tony was like, yeah, go for it. This is why we're such good friends. Needless to say, when Thor found out about all this, he wasn't happy. He was furious. This messed up their relationship for a while, and justifiably so. Stop cloning people. Most people don't want to be cloned. Bad blood. Also, Thor didn't even want to be on that side, so double blow. Civil War. What a time. Both times. I can't wait for Civil War 3. Number 1. She-Hulk and Star Fox. So She-Hulk hates Star Fox for a couple of reasons, like influencing her emotions and making her believe she was in love with John Jameson, Werewolf Jameson, and so she married him. She found this out while she was trying to discover if Star Fox had used his powers on her to make her sleep with him. This was while she was defending him for his other rapes that he had committed canonically because Thanos implanted memories in him that made him doubt himself, but not even the real Thanos. It was not the strongest plot. Jen is justifiably angry about all of this, but also at herself because he didn't influence her in the defending of him or the sleeping with him department. She changed her whole life after finding out about her and John though. She divorced John. It hurt how she could perceive her own thoughts. I hate him too. Cupid powers showcased in the grossest way. This is the plot that for many ruins Star Fox, while others are like, it's the writer's fault, not Star Fox. Share your thoughts. Number 10. Wonder Woman and Spider-Man. Now I didn't fall and hit my head, nor am I just some fake nerd girl noob. These two met in the sequel, spiritual sequel to Spider-Man and Superman's first team-up. In their first team-up they fought Lex Luthor and Doc Ock, who had kidnapped their ladies and also were planning to blow up the earth. So this first team-up was Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man, and the sequel is just Superman and Spider-Man. Just them hanging out. It was bigger with more heroes and Doctor Doom flaunting his diplomatic immunity. However, at one point during this, Spider-Man ended up meeting Wonder Woman and basically his brain melted and he went va-va-voom, so much woman, and just hit on her constantly. Meanwhile, she had bought into the media hype by the Bugle that he was essentially a supervillain. And so the two fought, but they sorted it out quickly. He still hits on her for the rest of it though. I can imagine Wonder Woman being one of the many heroes who find Spider-Man annoying. So this is low, cause the hate was brief, bright, and then over. Mostly I just wanted to tell you this happened. It's one of my fave crossovers, mostly because Doom and Superman have a really deep conversation about the responsibilities about walking the earth as essentially a god. Friends, who knew? Number 9. Bishop and Gambit. So Bishop was really convinced for a time that Gambit was the traitor he was looking for who had betrayed the X-Men and led to their downfall and hence the dystopian future that he came from. So why did he think this? Well, Bishop was born and raised in this future and he was taken in by a man named LeBeau, which we know to be Gambit, Remy's last name. The man who raised him was also known as the Witness, the last person to have seen the X-Men alive. Later, Bishop would come across a recording of Jean Grey, who said the X-Men had been destroyed by a traitor on the inside, which led him to suspect the Witness. When he traveled back in time and met the X-Men, he came to believe that Gambit was a younger version of the Witness and fought him, and proceeded to attempt to warn anyone who would listen about him, and also just give him side-eye constantly. Gambit of course responded in kind. No one likes being accused of potential future crimes. You hear that, Carol? No one. It would later come out that Gambit was not a traitor, so these two would squash their beef. Number 8. Guy Gardner and Fire. This occurred during their time on the JLI, the Justice League International. So Guy used to be really nice, up until he received brain damage fighting Sinestro. When the writers brought him back, they felt they had to do something to cure what they called his terminal blandness, which is harsh. So they gave him a brash, rude new toot. But since it was the result of brain damage by comic logic, if he got conked on the head again, it could just be reversed. And that's what happened. Then him and Ice, the best friend of Fire, started going out. Best friend in quotes, there's some hints there about other things going on. However, when he reverted back to his now established Guy ways, she wasn't into that. But she felt that she had seen the true man and hence was motivated to stay with him, even though he frequently embarrassed her or made her uncomfortable. This made Fire not like Guy very much at all. And while he didn't appreciate her butting into his relationship, this would all be solved, including the eventual Superman Guy Ice triangle, by Ice dying. That's one way to end a feud. The writers would later go on to say that her death was a mistake, an attempt at drama that fell flat. Number 7. Black Widow and Black Widow. While when most think of Black Widow, they think of Natasha Romanoff, there is another. This second Black Widow is Yelena Belova. While she and Nat would become allies, they started off as actual enemies. Both of them were raised and trained in the Red Room, and Yelena felt that she was the one who should hold the title of Black Widow, not Natasha. Nat would eventually have to use manipulation to make Yelena see that being the Black Widow was not this amazing pinnacle to aspire to. These two would, as I said, eventually get along, but it was a really rocky start, with Yelena viewing Natasha as a traitor, and the latter seeing the former as deluded. I'm gonna introduce Yelena to the MCU, so I have a question. How many of you are Yelena fans, or even knew about her? Small random test sample survey, go. Number 6. Storm and Emma Frost. Emma and Storm have beef, and Storm gets along with Doom, so that's saying something. Although, is it? Lots of people get along with Doom. Doctor Strange stayed at his castle with him when they went to rescue Doom's mom, and they had a nice time, at least it seemed like it. They had a nice dinner. I want to have dinner with Doom. So when Emma was the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, she tortured Storm, trying to force information from her mind. Emma even pulled the, I don't want to hurt you, I want us to be friends. So obviously, when Emma joined the team and would later rise to a role of leadership within it, a role that Storm has herself occupied at points, the best points in my opinion, she would clash with Storm. Also, Emma gives her grief for being royal and is all, Your Highness? You were the White Queen of a supervillain club. These two have fought multiple times and Emma has lost. So you can write these two as cordial, but I don't know, I like their kind of drama. A little friction is fun, not everyone should get along perfectly. It's okay for some characters to not let everything go. Number 5. The Hulk and the Thing. Halfway through with a classic battle. Many fans will remember these big brawls between the Hulk and the Thing. Fun fact, the Hulk was actually inspired by the success of the Thing in the Fantastic Four. Fans very much have a let them fight mentality. The Hulk freaks Ben out. Classic Hulk, that is, with how brainless and mindless he is. It's like looking into an uncomfortable funhouse mirror, because they are so similar. Early Hulk hated most people, Hulk smash and all that. But these two would eventually become friends, and it's sweet. Ben needs more friends. Friends who don't turn him into rock monsters. It's understandable why people still think they hate each other though. They just fought again the other day in a fight that made me cringe for the Thing. He got so hurt and it looked so painful. The rock part came off and it exposed his fleshy underbelly. This looks really painful. Number 4. Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost. Yes, Emma made the list twice. Look, a lot of people have problems with her. Take it up with them. This is again because of Emma's time as a villain. Kitty met her for the first time when she was young and Emma had imprisoned them, and she never forgot it and hasn't really forgiven. Kitty finds Emma to be cold, cruel, and manipulative and doesn't trust her. She's made sure that she can best her, and Emma is a little afraid of her. I mean, you should be afraid of someone who hates you so passionately and openly. But sometimes Emma has proved her right. On Emma's side, she's a bit colder about it, but it's hard to like someone who hates you and makes such a loud show of it, also rips your heart out. Their fights are really cool though. Phasing fights are always great, and then you add a psychic element to that and you've got a great matchup. Number 3. The Punisher and Batman. Yes, another crossover. The Punisher and Batman have met, teamed up, and hated almost every second of it, and I'm pretty sure you can guess why. They pretty much have the polar opposite philosophies when it comes to how to handle crime. Punisher's is, well, bullet to the head, and Batman's is reformation. Take them to Arkham. They can all be saved. I won't become what they are. This all came to a head when Batman actually saved the Joker from Punisher. He got in between them, between the Punisher, the gun, and Joker, and then told the Joker to run for his life. Frank fights him for a bit at first, but then just becomes so disgusted with him that he tells him that him and the Joker deserve each other and just leaves. Ouch. Batman on his side thinks the Punisher is unhinged and belongs in Arkham. Punisher / Batman Deadly Nights was a good read. Number 2. The Darkness and Witchblade. Yes, we're leaving Marvel and DC for a moment. I know, it's a September 26th miracle. I filmed it that day. What kind of miracle is it? Whenever you're watching it, it's that day's miracle. So the Witchblade is actually conceived as the result of a truce liaison between the Darkness, a cosmic entity, and Angelus, the embodiment of God's light, whom the Darkness resents for bringing life into the empty chaos that had been its domain. The Darkness would begin inhabiting human hosts as time went on, passing itself down through a chosen bloodline, always male. He would still bear the grudge against Angelus and manifest that in his attitude to those who wielded the Witchblade. Their confrontations are violent, dangerous, and at times oddly sexual, because Witchblade is, if you've seen Witchblades, it's a lot. It's an intriguing relationship that will span all of time, played out through human hosts. Number 1. Cyclops and Wolverine. All of you from part 1 were like, Sasha, Cyclops and Wolverine hate each other? Everyone knows this. And yes, they do. But they were on rivalries. But yes, this has crossed the line into hate on more than one occasion, and is part of what people know about them, so they deserve to be on here too. How do they hate each other? Let me count the ways. They were fighting over the same woman, yes, but that's only part of it. A small part. They have fundamentally different personalities, and even with her gone, they still fight with each other. Scott is uptight and wound so tight he could snap, and he does sometimes. He leads through countermeasures, so oftentimes as an opposing force rather than an inspiring one. He kowtows to authority and loves rules and order. Wolverine is a much more free agent, driven by passion, thumbing his nose at authority, and is softer than he would first appear on the surface. He also feels that Scott is a bit of a hypocrite. This is cause when push comes to shove, Cyclops is usually pretty happy to let Wolverine do the things that he can't. Here's the thing, these two can also be friends. It's a weird dynamic where just a few things would need to shift and they'd be a terrifying, unstoppable duo. So it's probably a good thing most of the time that they can't see their way clear to that. Number 10. Batwoman and Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain is one of the women to take up the mantle of Batgirl after Barbara Gordon. Initially mute and trained from birth to be an assassin, she would find herself taken in by Batman and learning his code, and really being treated very much as a daughter. She would come to have great respect for the whole Bat family and what they stood for, so she's not here for people breaking their code. Enter Batwoman. The modern Batwoman is a new take on the first one. Both are named Kathy Kane. The first Batwoman, however, was created purely as a love interest to prove that Batman and Robin were no homo. When she came back, she was her own character, and a lesbian as an FU to seduction of the innocent. But she's also, post-New 52, more set against the Bat family, all like, yeah, I took your symbol, your name, and your costume, but we have nothing to do with each other. Also, sometimes I'm your cousin. Sure, Jen. The thing with her is that she's far more open to killing, which set her against Cassandra for a bit, who had a full breakdown, crying about how their symbol that they wear means something, and how dare she disrespect it. And then Bruce gave Batwoman the most disappointed dad stare of all life. I love when characters have the conflict they should based on their personalities, instead of the whole, we're in the same group, we should stick together. Nah fam, give me interpersonal drama between the people who would have it. Number 9. Simon, Baz, and Batman. Speaking of codes and the like, why if it isn't Batman having words with yet another Green Lantern? Just he should write an angry letter to the Guardians. Please have Mogo pick better ring bearers, sincerely an angry vigilante who has to work with them. So when Simon first started, he was from a bit of a rougher area and had a bit more of an aggressive stance on what a Green Lantern could be, so he used to carry a gun. And well, you know how Batman felt about that. feels, Batman has a big no-no for guns, unless it's the Snyderverse or Batman Odyssey or some other exceptions. So Batman was all, it's not necessary, and legit his trauma aside, it kinda isn't. I mean, you have a ring that can construct anything you can conceive of, and you could use it to be a gun if you really wanted it to be, so it's kinda redundant, but that's just me. Number 8. Rogue and Dazzler. Rogue and Dazzler have some classic beef from when Rogue was still a supervillain and she absorbed Dazzler's powers, which you know some people get over and others don't. But this feud would continue even after Rogue was on the X-Men, but it would morph into a kind of tramp, hussy shame-off of them calling each other names and who was hotter and who was dressed more like a trollop. It was a moment, that's for sure. I got called a tart the other day and was more taken aback by the throwback than anything else. Like, what's next? A dame? A broad? Dazzler is one of those interesting characters where she's been around for decades now and has had many arcs and plots, and yet some people outside of comics are still like, who? So do you like both serious life or death fights but also petty cat fights? Cause these two have both. Number 7. Rick Grayson and the Bat Family. My goodness, an actual chance to talk about Rick Grayson? Oh joy. So Rick Grayson is renamed Dick Grayson after he got shot in the head by the KG Beast and got amnesia. Afterwards he couldn't remember who he was, but was suddenly filled with a Dan Didio-like certainty that his name shouldn't be Dick. And also, he didn't really want anything to do with the rest of the Bat Family. This is a split which has caused them great pain. Well, I mean, it would have bothered Bruce if he was in character, but he's too busy doing yoga on the beach. So despite not really wanting anything to do with his family, Rick is still a vigilante. In fact, there's a whole Nightwing group. Nightwing Gold, Nightwing Blue, Nightwing Red. Power Rangers assemble. So he's kinda in a Jason role right now, and maybe he'll be the new Talon, we'll see. Wake me up when the hate is over. Yes, it's one-sided, they all miss and love him. Poor Damian. His father abandoned him to go paddleboarding and grow a mustache, and his brother and father figure doesn't remember who he is. The name's Grayson. Rick Grayson. Number 6. Speaking of the Bat Family, we need some pre-New 52 drama with Jason Todd and Tim Drake. Jason Todd had a lot of strong feelings about Tim because, well, he was his replacement, or at least that's how Jason viewed it. He used to call Tim the Pretender, and he was out to hurt him as much as possible. He would actually shoot him in the knee or batarang him in the knee. There was serious knee injury. He took an arrow to the knee during the battle for the cowl. Tim should be permanently limping, thank goodness for comics. Tim started off not actively hating Jason, but after seeing the pain he was causing, plus being on the receiving end of Jason's at the time unhinged rage, responded in kind. These days, Tim and Jason have a better relationship, definitely eased by the fact that there is now an even newer Robin on the scene, Damian. Now him and Tim can bond. Jason was quite the big emotional catalyst when he first came back. Now he lives in a kind of limbo. People love him though. If you dare suggest anything bad about Jason, prepare for people to come for you, lock your doors, delete your search history. It's gonna get real intense. Number 5. Captain America and the Punisher. Midway through, we have some one-sided and kinda sad but understandable hate. The Punisher really admires Captain America, which is understandable. A lot of people in the Marvel Universe do. But Captain America, he is not here for Frank's methods, his brutality, his killing, his unwillingness to forgive, any of it. They had a really awkward fight in Civil War 1, wherein the Punisher didn't fight back when him and Steve fought. That always makes the aggressor look terrible. The sad man is a great defense tactic, gets the crowd on your side. There was also a what if story wherein Frank Castle was chosen to be Captain America over Falcon. For reasons. After Steve lost an arm and that was apparently beyond the pale, they needed a whole new Cap. Metal arms are for anti-heroes and Thor. Cap would find a way to convince Frank to change his ways in that story, but in main verse that is yet to occur. And it won't. A well-adjusted Punisher? He'd be cancelled. Number 4. Raven and the Justice League. Silly Justice League, not trusting people just cause they're an interdimensional portal for their monster destroyer world's father. Stop sipping on all that haterade. No matter the iteration, the Justice League is always at first wary of Raven. She's powerful and if unhinged could destroy the whole world, or prove to be the means for her father to do so. Raven doesn't hate the Justice League really, especially not in the new Teen Titans, but she will defend herself when push comes to shove. And there was an all-out battle between the two groups, Teen Titans and the League, because her father's influence did come through. So yeah, I understand why the League is concerned, but Raven works hard to not be evil, and most of the time it works. You know, unless it's Dick and Corey's wedding. Number 3. Rogue and the Scarlet Witch. Finally, Rogue having a problem with someone else and not the other way around. So back in the day, Wanda nearly erased all mutants from existence. I said back in the day, that wasn't that far back, but still. This was by uttering the phrase, "no more mutants." Mutants were on the run, hunted, it was a terrible time. And then a lot of the Marvel Universe just got over it, but not Rogue. Rogue doesn't forgive and forget quite so easily. And you know what else doesn't? House of X. It makes sense, especially with the new canon, that Wanda isn't a mutant, which hashtag not my Wanda, but I digress. dress. Rogue has come for Scarlet Witch more than once over this, and Wanda will defend herself, but also she has a lot of guilt over this, but it's more of a gee, I should learn to wield magic better so I don't almost nearly commit another near genocide. Number 2. Captain America and the US Agent. Whenever I put the US Agent on a list, people come for me. How dare you, he saved my family, we have lunch every month, he's a real hero. But Captain America and the US Agent, there is friction there. The US Agent would actually take up Cap's mantle for a bit, but he believed in far more brutal and decisive measures than Steve ever had. And it got to the point where Steve had to come out of retirement and take the mantle back because he felt that John was abusing it and staining it, while John felt he was utilizing his position to the fullest potential and that Steve was weak and soft. Also, when John first was introduced, he was a Captain America villain called the Super Patriot. He's gonna be in the Disney Plus series, so get excited for that. And number 1. Cyclops and Captain America. Avengers vs. X-Men. What a time. So the plot. Cliff Notes time. The Phoenix Force has crashed on Earth, looking for Hope Summers as a host, because the Summers' children are the only ones who matter except when they don't. The X-Men and Avengers differ on what to do about the Phoenix Force. This is post No More Mutants, so Hope comes to be viewed as like a mutant messiah. Her and the Phoenix Force combined will heal mutants and save the species, while the Avengers think that the Phoenix Force will destroy the Earth, while Cyclops and Cap would be the ones who played out this conflict the most. And Cap's strict adherence to what the government and S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted would burn a bridge between him and Cyclops, and also fuel that resentment in Scott. It's still there, and it would really start to crystallize his segregationist views that mutants and humans had separate interests, that humans couldn't be trusted, and that they should be separate. And well, Scott, he just rubs people the wrong way in general, so it's not hard to return the hate.
Number 10. Hawkeye and Winter Soldier. Hawkeye and Winter Soldier are forced to team up in the Tales of Suspense. Both seem to be on the case of tracking down Natasha, aka Black Widow, or someone who is acting as her copycat and killing off Hydra agents, as Natasha is supposed to be dead. It turns out that they are right and that she did die, but also she came back as a clone. Always clones. Turns out the Red Room made copies of her in case she was ever killed, and that they do this so they never truly lose an agent. This is that awful clone thing I'm always talking about in videos, if you remember that, in regards to Black Widow. Black Widow ends up getting her memories restored by a bear. Yes, you heard right, a bear. Natasha comes up with a plan to take down the Red Room, but tries to keep Clint and James out of it, as she knows they'll only get in her way. The two continuously bicker in this saga, and when Clint first runs into Bucky, he actually introduces him by confessing that he kind of hates him. Although it's odd because this is never really fully explained as to why they both don't really like each other. I guess it's because they both dated Black Widow, like they're both her exes, or just because maybe they're very different people. They both put up with each other long enough to complete their mission, and then pretty much immediately part ways. Number 9. Catwoman and Zatanna. Zatanna did a mind wipe of Dr. Light, and as such had to mind wipe Batman because he ran in and tried to stop her while she was in the middle of it. Being a powerful magic user has its consequences. You can do great things, powerful things, but you know, people are going to judge you for it. When what she had done came to light, pun not intended there, Batman especially was pretty upset with her. His trust had been broken, and his friendship with Zatanna had been ruined. Granted, he still wanted to work with her. When Catwoman found out that Zatanna had also tampered with her mind, and as such changed the entire direction of her life, well, she was beyond livid. She didn't want to hear Zatanna out, who had come to confess and apologize. She wanted to just move on, and when that didn't seem possible, she wanted to fight. Zatanna says to Catwoman, "I understand why you hate me," but Catwoman responds, "Hate is a strong word, Zatanna, and it's not even close to strong enough to describe what I think of you." Woo! Number 8. Tim Drake and Azrael. Really, I could also include Nightwing in there too, as both Robins were not a fan of Azbat. Azrael took up the Batman mantle after Bruce had his back broken by Bane in the events of Nightfall. Bruce decided to leave the mantle in Jean-Paul's capable hands, but becoming Batman drove Jean-Paul to madness. Tim disagrees with the fact that Azrael kills criminals that he goes up against, and he says as much to him, which gets them in a fight. Azrael even feels bad whenever he loses his temper with Robin, but Tim just feels like he is a dangerous, ticking time bomb. When Bruce came back and saw that Gotham seemed to be fairly free of crime, I mean as free of crime for Gotham as anyone can expect anyways, he expressed leaving Azbat in the role and retiring from the vigilante life. Tim was amazed and confessed that Azbat had killed. Later, Nightwing also got involved, and the three decided that Azrael needed to be stopped. Bad Azbat. Number 7. Batman and Guy Gardner. The hatred between these two goes back to the old days of the Justice League International. Guy constantly nagged Batman, who was leading the league, trying to get more authority from him, but was always briskly denied by the Bat. And one day, Guy decided he had had enough of Bruce's leadership. Guy thought he should lead the league and challenge Batman to a fight to prove himself. He swore he could take on Batman in hand-to-hand combat without the power of his ring. This resulted in what is commonly referred to as the one-punch event. Batman took Guy Gardner down with one swift punch to the face, causing Blue Beetle to exclaim, "One punch! One punch!" Ever since that day, and obviously even before that, the two have never gotten along. Number 6. Bishop and Cable. These two have worked alongside one another before, but the events of the Messiah Complex changed their relationship entirely. The first baby since the events of House of M with the X gene is born, and the race is on for all the groups to try and steal it. Two players in this strange game of Pass the Mutant Baby are Bishop and Cyclops. The two of them have different beliefs as to what should be done with the baby. Bishop wants to kill her, as in his future she grows up to be the one who kills thousands of people, which causes the mutant concentration camps to exist. Cable wants to save her, as in his future she unites all of man and mutant kind. The two beliefs on what the mutant messiah represents dramatically divide the two mutants from different futures. In the end, Cable ends up with her and takes her to the future. He names her Hope after his deceased wife, and she grows up to become mutant Hope Summers. No baby for you, Bishop. No baby for you. Number 5. Miss Marvel and Rogue. These two have been on better terms with one another lately, but their hatred was fairly long-lasting. It was also mostly one-sided. I find a good amount of hate in the comics between the heroes actually is one-sided. It's like someone wants to apologize and the other person just doesn't want to hear it. Rogue basically touched Carol Danvers for too long and ended up draining or absorbing more of her powers than she had intended. She also ended up taking Carol's memories in the process, leaving her a shell of her former self. Miss Marvel went to the X-Men, and more specifically Professor Xavier, for help, and they took her in and did their best to help her in recovery. This is actually where Rogue gets her constant ability to fly. Rogue eventually reformed and joined up with the X-Men. She had stolen Carol's powers during her time with the Brotherhood, and she actually felt bad about what she had done, but also she felt somewhat annoyed as she had to live with a piece of Carol constantly inside her mind. The two women have since made up, with Carol offering forgiveness to Rogue after saving her. Though Rogue did try to absorb Carol's powers again in Avengers vs. X-Men, which did not land well with Carol, but then she became Captain Marvel, and now she's over it. She's got her own stuff going on. Now everyone hates her anyways. Number 4. Damian Wayne and Tim Drake. Two Robins that have had a hard time getting along with others. Ergo, it is unsurprising that they both have a hard time getting along with one another. In Tim Drake's defense, he did try to befriend Damian when they first met, only to have Damian try to kill him. Needless to say, from there, Tim was riding that hate train pretty hard, even going so far as to attack Damian when he first shows back up at the manor, announcing that Ra's al Ghul has returned and is after him. Neither one trusts the other. Damian thinks Tim is unworthy and does not deserve to fight alongside his father, as he is not his rightful son. Tim just thinks Damian is a crazed assassin. And well, I mean, he sort of is. Number 3. Captain Marvel and She-Hulk. After the events of Civil War II, a lot of people were feeling some pretty strong hatred towards Captain Marvel. Where Iron Man was painted as the bad guy in the first Civil War between him and Cap, Captain Marvel had now stepped into being the bad guy in Civil War II, going up against Iron Man. While Iron Man obviously had some beef with Captain Marvel coming out of the event after he awoke from, the coma that she put him in, the two had been close before, so eventually they worked towards patching things up. She-Hulk had missed almost the entire event of Civil War II, except for the one event that instigated the divide. In that fight, however, she was knocked into a coma. When she awoke, she discovered that her cousin Bruce Banner, the Hulk, had been killed. Jennifer was shattered and ended up turning gray as a result. She primarily blamed Captain Marvel for this, as the one who believed in using Inhuman Ulysses' visions. Hawkeye believed that Bruce was about to transform into Hulk and unleash mass death and destruction, and mercifully killed him with an arrow to the head. Jennifer was fighting alongside Danvers before the events of Civil War, but the death of her cousin shattered their friendship. Number 2. Old Man Logan and Old Man Hulk. In the dystopian world of Old Man Logan's story, Bruce has pretty much lost his mind. He and his inbred brood of children and grandchildren are the Hulk gang. Banner's children were sired by him and his cousin, She-Hulk, apparently. Ew. The Hulk gang are the landlords of the town that Wolverine lives in with his partner and their children. Bruce is no longer the gentle giant he once strived to be. The gamma radiation has seemingly driven him mad. He and his brood demand payment from old man Logan. Logan agrees to help Hawkeye with a job in order to get the funds he needs for rent. Unfortunately, when he arrives back in town with the funds, he finds out he is too late. The Hulks got bored apparently and came over and killed his family. Logan then takes the fight to Banner, who when transformed is stronger than he's ever been. He devours Logan, but Logan gets him back in the end, regenerating within Hulk's stomach and then cutting his way out, killing Banner and avenging his family's death. Number 1. Black Widow and Hawkeye. Okay, so we have to go to an alternate universe for this one, but it still happened. The ultimate universe is where we're going, of course. In that universe, almost everyone hates Black Widow after she turns out to be a traitor. She and Iron Man are about to get married when she turns on him and kills Jarvis. She was the one behind the death of Hawkeye's family as well, and the kidnapping of Hawkeye. Fortunately, Tony Stark had just gifted her a suit of armor, which meant she had nanite implants, and unfortunately for Natasha, Tony had control of those implants, so he was able to knock her out and have her captured pretty much immediately. While Natasha was in the hospital, Hawkeye had escaped his captors and he came straight for her. He shot arrows through her hands and pinned her to the wall before putting an arrow right in her skull. No one messes with Hawkeye's family, and you definitely do not want to be on his hate list. Number 10. All the Robins. There's definitely a level of hate between all Robins due to the competitive edge. They're all working hard to impress Batman, and because of that, they all get competitive with each other, like a bunch of siblings vying for parental attention. It often quickly becomes about who is the best Robin, even when they are working together. The Robin War comic series has many moments of this, especially between Damian and all of the other Robins, as to be expected. Of course, this is also exacerbated for Damian by the fact that they're also dealing with a literal group of copycats who aspire to be like some version of Robin as well. And Teen Titans Go episode, Best Robin, highlights just how easy it is for the Bat family to devolve into petty feuds. Like any family, you can't have family love without a bit of family hate. Number 9. Catwoman and Black Canary. Despite these two both being members of the Birds of Prey in the Batman animated series, these two don't always see eye to eye. A lot of the interactions in comics involve them making snide remarks at one another. And in 2008, they actually fought, although the hate between them was fairly short-lived. It was still fairly humorous and real, as the two faced fighting for their own existence and the existence of the animals that they share their names with. In the Catwoman / Tweety and Sylvester crossover, Selena is fighting for the existence of all cats, while Dinah fights for the existence of all birds. The two battle across the city and are forced to recruit other team members to help them out. This also allows us to see fellow Teen Titans Starfire and Raven duke it out, as Starfire is descended from cats, apparently, while Raven is obviously representing birds, I suppose due to her name. Catwoman even calls Amanda Waller for backup. It's a pretty funny comic, you should read it. Number 8. Wolverine and Spider-Man. These two just seem to be polar opposites when it comes to their philosophy and attitude on life and crime fighting. Whenever the two are forced to team up, it usually ends in torture for one or both of them. Whether they are swapping bodies or getting sent back in time and forced to live with cavemen and dinosaurs, the two always struggle to see eye to eye and detest one another as a result. In Spider-Man vs. Wolverine out of the 80s, we even saw the two come to blows over their different philosophies. Wolverine was trying to help a friend who wanted to die by giving them a mercy killing, but was stopped from finishing the job by Spider-Man, who had come across the two and couldn't stand by, not understanding why Wolverine would kill his friend. The two fight, and Spider-Man accidentally punches the very woman he was trying to save when she uses his spidey senses against him, sneaking up on him and causing him to punch her to death. Oh, comics. The only place where someone get one punch to death. Wolverine to the stomach and then one punch from Spider-Man, yeah, out. Number 7. Emma Frost and Professor X. Emma goes into Professor X's mind to make sure there is no trace of Mr. Sinister and no influence over Charles. In X-Men Legacy, Emma goes into Professor X's mind to make sure there is no trace of Mr. Sinister and no influence over Charles. She does this for Scott, as it is not a task she looks forward to. Charles doesn't even think she can manage it. Ooh, harsh. And yet, she does manage it, searching through Charles' memories and somewhat torturing him. She says she doesn't enjoy it, but she explicitly judges Charles while she does so, analyzing the way that they both see reality. The way Emma sees it, she's more of a grounded person, whereas Charles almost sees himself as more of a god or a guardian angel when it comes to the mutants he teaches. At least that's how Emma sees his perception of self. Although Cyclops often praises Emma as a teacher, to her she is actually only ever training students, and this divide between Emma and Charles causes the two to get in a pretty large fight while she is inside his mind. And although the two mutants can often remain civilized and respect one another, there is definitely some hatred bubbling under the surface, and it comes up in this comic, especially coming from Emma, as she doesn't really agree with Charles's treatment of Scott, the way that he raised him. You know what I mean. Number 6. Reed Richards and Namor. These two hate each other because of love. They both have feelings for Sue Storm, and although Reed Richards is actually married to her, Namor constantly feels like Richards does a terrible job of being a good partner, which for the most part is kind of true. But Sue loves Reed and won't leave him. Why? Well, we'll never really know that. Reed is definitely brilliant, but his brilliance often leads him into neglecting his wife and his family life. Namor describes their relationship best when he says, "You met her, you dated her a short time, then you accidentally gave her powers that forced her into your tower. That tower is a cage, created by you for her, but she has come to terms with it. She still loves you." The two can constantly be seen in the comics insulting one another and occasionally even fighting over Sue. Fighting over those ladies. Number 5. Misty Knight and Jessica Jones. Misty has never thought that Jessica was good enough for her friend Luke, and Jessica has never liked that Misty seems to dislike her for no good reason. As such, whenever these two are in a room together, things are bound to get pretty ugly. Even as early as the first issue of Jessica Jones Volume 1 Issue 1 from 2016, one of the first few pages actually shows Misty paying Jessica a visit after she has just got out of prison. The two immediately get in a fight, as Misty has obviously been sent by Luke to retrieve or check up on Luke and Jessica's daughter. Misty says that she has never liked Jessica on a subatomic level, and that she feels she has finally been proven right. The fight ends with Jessica dragging Misty out of her office. It's lucky Jessica didn't throw her through something, jeez, poor Misty. Miss Martian and Martian Manhunter. Miss Martian actually ends up killing Martian Manhunter. Okay, so no, not that Martian Manhunter. This version of Martian Manhunter is actually Miss Martian, but from 9 years in the future. The Teen Titans of the future have returned to the past to preserve the future they came from. The version of Miss Martian that returns has now adopted the mantle of Martian Manhunter, and wears the color of her true race with pride, choosing to appear white rather than green. Miss Martian isn't sure if she can trust her future self, but becomes intrigued with her when she notices her immunity to fire. When her future self prevents her from saving Robin, and her fire immunity is revealed to come not from her power as a white Martian, but from her future armor technology of some kind, she turns on this version of Martian Manhunter. Her future self berates Miss Martian's mind with visions of the future she has come from, filled with graphic images of violence, causing Miss Martian to snap and decapitate her future self. Woo! You know it's hate when it ends with decapitation. That's the border right there. Iron Man and Iron Man. I'm so sorry, but yes, we're going to the crossing for this one. In this Marvel event, it was revealed that Tony Stark was brainwashed by Cain a long time ago and was actually evil. Why he helped defeat Cain so many times, well, that never really made any sense or was explained. Just get ready to put logic on hold for this Marvel event. In order to defeat Iron Man, the Avengers came up with a brilliant idea of snagging his teen self from the past and putting him up against the current Iron Man. That actually only made evil Tony Stark more mad, unfortunately. He whooped his teen self's butt, and when he saw that arrogance in his younger self's eyes, he abhorred it, and he almost killed him. Tony said that his arrogance was what had led him down the path that he was at now, and even though he was evil now, he apparently had some self-loathing issues. Also, that one panel of young him being so happy to have older him dead, but then he feels remorse later, so it's fine. He cries later, he mourns himself. Number 2. Batman and Spawn. Batman runs into Spawn at kind of a bad time during their crossover comic. Spawn was in the process of sending some bad guys to hell, but to Batman, who was not privy to their misdeeds, it looked kinda like murder. His hatred of Spawn comes from the fact that he thinks he is undisciplined and a murderer, whereas Spawn's hatred of the Bat comes from the fact that he thinks he's kind of just a whiny rich kid who is also also just a mortal. Even when the two come together to face the big bad in the comic, they still part on bad terms. Spawn asks Batman if they can bury the hatchet after their team up, and Batman answers by burying a batarang right in the middle of Spawn's face. I guess that's a no. Number 1. Iron Man and Black Widow. Going to the Ultimates universe again for this one. As I said in my previous video when I was talking about the Ultimates Black Widow, no one really likes her. And classifying her as a hero is, not really accurate, as she does turn out to be a traitor, but before that reveal we all actually thought that she was a hero. So I'm gonna count it. In the Ultimates, Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff become an item. The two even get engaged and plan to get married, which shocked a lot of people. But even more shocking was when it turned out that Natasha was betraying her friends, the Avengers and Tony. While the Liberators are invading, Natasha distracts Tony in the bedroom. But when he can hear the explosions from there, he insists they see what's going on and help out their friends. It's then that Natasha pulls a gun on him and reveals her true colors. Just then, Jarvis enters with breakfast and Black Widow shoots him in the head. Oh, Jarvis! Tony had gifted her her own Iron Man suit for their wedding, but fortunately he still controls the nanites within her body that allow her to control the suit, and he uses his control over them to disable Black Widow, announcing that 5,000 failed relationships can make a man a little cynical. Yeah, that's a lot of failed relationships, so that makes sense. Number 10. Hulk and Thor. Hulk and Thor recently clashed in Donny Cates' crossover story between their two series, both of which he is currently penning. The story that he wrote with them duking it out is entitled Banner War. However, these two also have a long history of having beef in the comics, albeit pretty playful beef I'd say. Their feud is similar in nature to that of Hulk's feud with the Thing. The question starting it all being who is really strongest between them. Thor likewise enjoys the challenge of taking on Hulk, and the two are seen as being pretty evenly matched. Though at the end of the day, I would actually still say that Hulk is stronger, as Hulk is known for being the strongest there is after all. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us that you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern. Martian Manhunter was there when Jon Stewart's Green Lantern let an entire planet be destroyed as a result of his ego. The two were deployed to the planet in the hopes of saving it, but Green Lantern didn't feel that he actually needed Martian Manhunter's help and restrained him. Unfortunately, this proved to be a mistake, as when Jon found the bomb on the planet, it and the room that it was contained in was painted entirely yellow, preventing Jon from using his Green Lantern powers to do anything to destroy or defuse it. Yikes. As a result, the planet was destroyed, with only Jon and Jon surviving the explosion, leaving Martian Manhunter grossly disappointed in his colleague Green Lantern and his hubris. Number 8. Captain Marvel and Iron Man. This is a pretty ridiculous one considering how close these two were, but hey, Civil War II happened. It happened and we gotta acknowledge it. We can't ignore that. Carol and Tony used to be the best of friends, with Tony even using the nickname of Care Bear for Carol, a nickname that her BFF Jessica Drew aka Spider-Woman also often uses, so you know that means that they're pretty close. However, this didn't stop them from getting into it when Carol believed the best way to deal with crime was by fighting criminals before they even manifested as such. That was what Civil War II was basically all about. Basically, it was Minority Report. Captain Marvel believed that using the Inhuman Ulysses' visions to prevent crime was the best course of action, whereas Tony, oddly enough the voice of reason here, believed the best way to go about things was actually to wait until an actual crime happened, not trust in, as he saw it, unreliable visions. Enter Civil War II, which ended with Carol as pretty much a straight up unreasonable villain in the eyes of readers who punched Tony into a coma. Number 7. Robin and Robin. When it comes to the Bat family, there are quite a few feuds to be had, unsurprisingly. I mean, hey, it's a big family. Still, I think one of the most dramatic was the one between Tim Drake and Damian Wayne. Initially, when these two met, they seemingly got off on the wrong foot, and Tim kinda wanted to try to offer an olive branch. This came in the form of offering to spar with young Damian, with Tim promising to take it easy on him. However, everything quickly went awry when Damian revealed that earlier in the night he'd actually killed a criminal, the Spook, taking his head. The two ended up fighting, and Damian knocks out Robin's Tim Drake, leaving him bleeding on the floor of the Batcave, and donning a version of his costume when he goes to confront his father, letting him know that he is ready to replace Tim as Robin. Batman ends up returning and retrieving Tim, helping to fix up the damage that Damian did to him. Eventually, these two would move past this feud, but for a while there, it was basically life-threatening. Number 6. Daredevil and Punisher. Daredevil and the Punisher are usually seen to be friends and allies, but because of their difference in opinions when it comes to how best to handle superheroic issues, they are sometimes known known to be rivals of one another as well. This element of their relationship is especially highlighted in the Netflix Daredevil series, where we are first introduced to this world's live-action representation of the Punisher. Here, Matt Murdock disagrees with Punisher's tactics, believing he should not kill his enemies or people who get in his way of tracking down his true enemies, whereas the Punisher believes the people he kills deserve it. Although both see the other as a hero of sorts, there are times when they look down on one another or condemn them for their methods. In fact, Frank Castle has likely thought before that Daredevil is not harsh enough when it comes to the way that he doles out justice. Number 5. Zatanna and Catwoman. Oh boy, does Catwoman have reason to have beef with Zatanna. These two ended up in a fight with one another after it was revealed that Catwoman may have only become a full-fledged hero as a result of Zatanna manipulating her mind. Because of this revelation, Catwoman turned on Zatanna, with the two getting into a physical fight. In the end, Selina was rightly pissed at Z after learning this, feeling like she had never in her life been more violated than she was when Zatanna changed her against her will. It also made Catwoman question whether or not she was actually the hero she had become at this point, since she'd obviously had no choice in that matter. What a terrible thing to do to someone. Number 4. Jean Grey and Emma Frost. A feud that feels as old as time, really, or at least almost as old as Emma Frost's character. Initially, this feud started because Emma was a villain in the comics, being the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. This made her a rival to not just Jean, but also all of the X-Men. Emma was actually introduced around the time of the Dark Phoenix saga too, and was one of those present and involved when Mastermind took Jean and brainwashed her into joining the Hellfire Club as its Black Queen. Of course, this wasn't really Jean, but the Phoenix, who had taken on Jean's likeness, both in personality and in appearance. What really caused these two women to dislike one another though took place when Emma had reformed and become a hero, and that happened mainly as a result of Emma having a psychic affair with Jean's husband, Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, during a time when their marriage was strained. Hence the feud. Number 3. Superman and Shazam. One of the most iconic feuds in comics isn't necessarily a real narrative feud. I mean, these two don't typically go after one another to fight needlessly in terms of themselves as characters. They don't really have much of a reason to be jealous of the other or even dislike the other, but they do end up pitted against each other, often in alternate realities, and just because people like to see who would win if they got in a fight. And actually, their feud extends back in history to like the creation of these characters, which were considered rivals in terms of them being with two different publishers at the time in comics. In most cases, because these two are so evenly matched, generally their fights end in either a standstill, a stalemate, or with Superman implied as the victor. While Superman might be weak to Shazam's magic, Shazam is often forced to transform back into Billy by Superman's tactics. So, number 2. X-Men and the Eternals. Though not all X-Men and not all Eternals are involved in this one. This feud is actually what sets up the Avengers vs. X-Men vs. Eternals Judgment Day event. It all goes down because of the reveal to the world that mutants have the power to resurrect themselves, which is happening now in modern comics, essentially meaning that mutants have become immortal beings. Druig, who at the time is Prime Eternal, thinks this makes mutants far too powerful and labels them as deviants, which obviously deviants are the people that the Eternals must always fight against, which apparently isn't that much of a stretch either, because genetic-wise, mutants are similar enough to deviants for the deviants to successfully be able to use the gates on Krakoa. Labeling them as deviants means the Eternals go to war with the mutants and of course their premier superhero team, the X-Men. Hence, X-Men and Eternals fighting each other. Number 1. Green Lantern and Batman. At this point, Batman pretty much has beef with, well, almost any Green Lantern you can think of. At least most of the Green Lanterns who are Earth-based, I would say. The most famous feud between Batman and Green Lantern, though, is the one between Bruce and Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner is basically the epitome of everything that kinda irks Batman in regards to a fellow hero's attitude. He's brash, bold, grating, and often seen as undisciplined. At least, you know, in comparison to someone as regimented as Batman, I would say. When Guy found himself in the Justice League and under Batman's leadership, the two clashed to the point that Guy actually decided to challenge Batman, hoping to replace the Dark Knight as the new leader of the team. Well, this didn't end very well for Guy, who was knocked out famously in one punch by Batman. Although it should be noted that this was Guy fighting without the power of the Green Lantern, as he egotistically chose to take off his power ring and not fight with it. So yeah, which is pretty Guy Gardner, I gotta say.